Okay, my name is Guilherme. For those that don't speak Portuguese, maybe it's a bit strange, that name, so you can call me Gui. Feel free for that. I work at... Oh, sound, yes, okay. So I work at Checkout. You can find them in the exhibition area. And today I'm here to talk about simplicity. And I hope that this thing goes really simple, because maybe you are like me, and by the end of five days, whoop, is it okay? Can I keep going? Okay. So I was saying, maybe after these days of conference, your brain is like mine, and it's about to explode with so much information, and it's even difficult to keep this thing going. But we need to find the energy, and what I can promise to you is that this talk will be simple, okay? And will be basically based on a set of stories, a set of tools that I want to share with you, with basically an end goal that is making you realize that you have an option, and that option is choosing simplicity. And why this is important, may you ask, before you leave the room, just thinking that this doesn't make any sense. Because many of us are feeling a lot of stress, are feeling a lot of anxiety, and that is part of our job. Yeah? We know, we work with people that are burning out. We have been burning out for sure. And we should be aware of the tools that we can do to solve those things. And the tools are not going on holidays for a week. The tools imply doing things every single day. So what I would like to start is by telling you a story. The story that is a personal story is something that happened to me. Basically, in 2015, I was feeling a lot of back pain for a long period of time, and I was not able to go to visit a doctor, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. It's a kind of being really stubborn. And until the moment that my wife finally made me go, she has that power on me, and I went to visit the doctor, and she prescribed some exams, and I was diagnosed with a disease that is ankylosing spondylitis, really strange name, right? That basically 1 to 2 people in 1,000 may have, but often they don't notice it. And when I was diagnosed, I was on a medical appointment. I listened to those words, okay? You have ankylosing spondylitis, and everything that the doctor said after that, I didn't listen. I was in shock. Such a strange name, this should be really severe, right? So I didn't listen anything else. And once I get out of the medical's office, what I have done, anyone can try to figure out? I Google it. Worst thing that you can do related to health, I can assure you. I was about to die, according to Google, okay? 2 months and I will be dead. And yeah, in the reality, it can be pretty scary. And in my case, it's under control. I'm not a severe case. But for many people, this is really hard to live with it. There are many people that can't even be vaccinated because they need to take meds to deal with this disease. And I start realizing that I can have a lot of complications because of this. For example, I can have problems with my skin. I can become blind from one day to the other. So that is scary, right? And I went to a different doctor asking if I really have this thing. Yes, I have it. And I was expecting to find some tools to deal with it, right? We that work in technology, we want practical things. We want actions to take. The reality is that doctors always tell you the same thing. You just need to keep having a healthy life. What does that mean, right? He told me, you should go swim. I don't know how to swim. I am afraid of pools. So that was not a good help for me. And okay, I keep going, and I went to the best place for looking for help, but this time I have more information. I know that this thing can be controlled. And when I start digging up, I went to Stack Overflow, no solution for this, unfortunately. But I found a lot of people talking about how they cope with the disease. And I learned that by some small things, I can do the same. I changed my diet, I changed the type of exercise that I do. At the time, I was thinking that yoga was something that was not for me, but in fact it is. It's helping me a lot. I changed a lot of things. I started meditating. I realized how important it is to breathe, right? Just take a moment and breathe. Realize that you need to breathe. And all of those things were really important and made me progress until the moment that I am today. And you may be thinking, why the hell is telling all these things? And we work in technology, you are in a technology conference, right? Because I start realizing that even then, after controlling all those things, sometimes I feel a lot of pain. And I start tracking those moments as a good engineer does, starts measuring everything. And I realize that often it happens on the day after of a stress spike, okay? Can you figure out what will be happening to me tomorrow, right? So on the day after of living a stressful moment, I usually feel really bad. And that is a good explanation for the thing, because my disease is all about inflammation. So, and when you are stressed, your body starts to react to those things. So, since we work with technology, and I was realizing that often that stress comes from my work, I tried to understand what I could do to deal with it. And at the time, I was reading a book that is the book Sapiens. Anyone has read Sapiens? Yeah, Brave People. It's a huge book. And Sapiens basically tell you the story of 70,000 years of evolution of the human species. You will see the human going from recollectors, right, to building societies, inventing the fire, knowing how to hunt, building their own tools, until moments where we basically invent, for example, money, cars, airplanes, we fly to the moon, we fight the pandemic in 2 years, never happened that thing. And we keep evolving, and now we even can look like Santa Claus with just a smartphone. Or better, we can look like a cat. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, we use technology for a lot of things, and while those 70,000 years we have evolved and we survived until this moment through technology, nowadays I see a lot of investment in technology to make you stress, to make you pain. Hey, sorry. Everyone knows this gesture, right? We are quite used to do it. One day there will be a disease related to this gesture, for sure. And it's true, we spend a lot of time doing it. But I would like to ask you, take a few seconds and try to come up in your mind your 3 favorite things in the world, okay? Anyone has on those 3 things scrolling through Instagram or TikTok? No one, but I bet that you spend more time doing that than your favorite things. It's human nature almost at the moment. I think that's content on the keynote. He's talking about doom scrolling, something like that. I've never heard the term, but is that we are doing it? So we are bringing complexity to our life. But the worst part is that it's our choice to choose what we do, right? We have a lot of jobs nowadays available for us. And many of us work for the companies that are killing our time, right? We are building things to create people that are addicted to technology. So we have our own responsibility with it. As I think that it was really Confucius. Sometimes this could be by another person, right? Maybe it was Roosevelt, no one knows. But yeah, life can be really simple, but we try to mess up every single time. We bring a lot of complexity to our life. And you may think, why this is a problem, right? And it is a problem, according to me, because I tried to come up with a realization how to categorize that complexity. And I came up with basically 3 ideas. One, you have inherent complexity to your problem. That is the one that we like. We are problem solvers, right? We are here to build complex things, to solve complex problems, and we like that, right? We don't want to do small functions that have 2 numbers. We want to build something really complex. But there's complexity that comes from the normal project life cycle. For example, everyone has been in a place where someone comes up and says, when will this be ready? In a month, right? And you start thinking, in reality it's in 3 months, but yes, and you go forward, right? Everyone has been there, for sure. Or for example, when you start reaching by the deadline and you start realizing that it will not work, and you say, yeah, this will not make it, and management will tell you, how can we do, what can we do to make it? And you can say, we can do this in a different way, we assume this technical debt, and that is complexity being created that we need to handle in the future, and that will cause stress, that will cause anxiety. On my case, it will cause pain, right? And the other one is maybe the worst one, is when we self-inflict complexity. And you may think, okay, all that stress, all that anxiety, yeah, we can handle it. The difference between you and me probably is that I have a warning sign. I know when I'm facing it. You may be dealing with it, you can keep going with it for a long time until the moment that it's too late. That's why we need to pay attention to that. And now and why complexity is such a big problem? Because let's face it, anything that is complex is difficult to change. That's why we refer to some things as legacy projects, right? It's because they are really complex and no one likes to touch it. Everything that is complex requires too much effort, being effort in time, effort in money, effort in a lot of things, and all that effort is translated into waste, right? There are a lot of talented people working with complex problems that don't bring a lot of value, and if they could bring their creativity to different things, it will help a lot. And everything that is really complex doesn't have a lot of quality, to be honest. And we don't want that for our life. So we need to start applying self-inflicted complexity. And the first thing is spot those cases, right? When am I doing that? This one, I was a huge specialist. Nowadays, I try to be careful with it. I try to be careful with it. That those moments is when you go to NDC Porto 2022 and you listen about Blazor, or a lot of DDD, Kubernetes, all those things. Everything looks amazing, right? And on Monday, you go back to the office and you are really excited and you start looking for a problem to apply those things. Not the other way around, as it should be. I can promise you that if you pick all those things and you apply them on Monday, you will live with them for 2 years. And in NDC Porto 2024, you will come here and you will realize that you need to replace some of them. It happens too often, especially if you are a web developer. Yeah, so why do we keep doing that? Why we go back to the office looking for problems for solutions instead of the other way around? I have done that a lot. Or for example, do you know when you start developing a feature and you start thinking, maybe one day having this as a configuration will be useful. I will do this just in case. Then you do it, it's a configuration, you need to maintain the configuration, and no one touched that thing. Never. It's effort that you are applying that is not needed. And let me tell you one thing, we are not good predicting the future. Right? I was not expecting to live through a pandemic during my lifetime. Right? It's a major event, I see it. Bill Gates was talking about it. Right? It's the same thing, when we try to predict the future, everything results in complexity for our life. And all that complexity is translated in a simple thing, that is an high cognitive load. An high cognitive load is when you need to do a lot of processing in your mind to understand how one thing works. And when you do that, you are basically creating anxiety and a lot of effort and a lot of investment. That is the complexity that you want to avoid. You want to avoid to being on a place where some teams build things like this, right? You are too focused on creating the most amazing thing, but you forget that would be useful to charge your mouse while, to use your mouse while it's charging. And yes, this is Apple, right? So all of those things are we as engineers that self-inflict to ourselves. We know over-engineering and all those things. But there should be a different way, right? And the way that I like to say things when I'm trying to find a way to go, a place to be, is to find references. And I start digging around and reading a few books about good examples of applying simplicity to your life in our industry. And I found a good example. Some of them, you don't need to look around. For example, Apple was able to build that mouse, but okay, it's one mistake. Let's assume that. But besides that, everyone recognizes Apple as a brand that is really careful with the detail, is really careful with the experience, is really careful with making everything really easy to use and everything awesome, right? They are focused on that. At least Steve Jobs was. Not sure if nowadays they are doing the same. Or for example, Lego. Simple plastic bricks that you give to a toddler or to a grown-up or to a developer, and they will come up with amazing things. How many talks have you seen where someone talks about Lego, right? We use it all the time. And it's really simple, this thing. The guy that came up with this idea is a genius. Or another thing that's from our day-to-day. Basically, Unix has a philosophy that is all about simplicity. Do one thing and do it well, right? And it's all of that that I was looking for. Because when you look for something simple, you try to project an image. You try to project an image of quality. Anything that is simple looks like has more quality than other things complex. For example, think that you go to buy a car, okay? And now try to imagine a stand, a car dealer, where they are selling basically luxury cars, like a Jaguar or something like that. What will happen is that you go to a place, and you'll find a huge building with just one car, usually, or two, right? A lot of empty space. You go to buy a used car, and you'll find all of them so packed that you try to open the door to look inside, and you can't, right? Which one do you think has more quality? Or they trust more on the car? And you can see the same example being applied in a lot of places, right? Usually the best websites are quite simple. There's a lot of white space. 70,000 years ago, when we were in the jungle, we were really afraid something could jump on top of us, right? We would prefer to be on a place where those things, we can see them really far. So we have those things in our brain still. And also, everything that is simple, we trust it more. I can trust on myself to take a decision on something like an insurance. I'm always afraid of taking the wrong decision because it's not my language. There's a lot of conditions. What if I decide that this thing doesn't matter and one day it will really matter? If it is simple and you tell me you just have these three options, right? And you will be fine if you pick one of them. Yeah, I will trust that. But it's not what happens often. And that increases that cognitive load. Is on those decisions that you start to feel anxious. You start feeling that stress. And my end goal is basically to come up into a place where by the end of the day, I can go back home and I don't have a background job working on the problem that I left in my office, right? I want to be with my daughter. I want to be with my wife. I want to pay attention on the things that I want to do. I want to be meaningful on my actions. But often we are not, because we work in technology and we think that since it's a work that is highly based on your brain, you need to carry it around every single time. But no, problems should be simple to solve, right? Okay, so next steps. Let's start talking about how to apply simplicity, what we can do to do those things. And let's start by the first question that I receive a lot. By making things simple, aren't we coming up with things that look like we don't care, right? That looks like lack of effort, right? The reality is that that will not happen, and I can tell you why. Because everything has a line that you can't cross, and that line will be moved according to the context. If you are building software for doctors, you will build with a certain level of complexity. Maybe I don't understand that software, but they will, right? If you build software for a software developer, it's different than software for my parents, right? You don't expect the same rules. So it's those things that you need to keep in mind. And you need to keep in mind that in the reality, simplicity is really hard. It's really, really hard. You need to fight for it. You need to be aware that things can go really bad. And you need to fight for it and invest a lot of time sometimes to come up with a simple solution. Yeah? If Steve Jobs said it, yeah, it should be right. Huh? And if you want to go on that journey, don't be afraid of feeling like the crazy guy that talks about, let's make this thing more simple. It's in the manifest itself. If you work on an agile methodology, the 10th principle is all about that. It's about preventing yourself from doing the wrong thing. And by doing the wrong thing doesn't mean that you are not failing. It means that you try to anticipate any risk of doing something that is waste, right? You start doing one thing, you go until the moment that you realize it doesn't work. What you want to do is to fail really, really, really fast. And one example of that, I'm not sure if anyone knows, is the X company. Anyone have heard about the X company? It looks like something from X-Files, right? It's a company by Google, by the way, okay? They name it the Moonshot Factory. It's basically the company that came up with ideas like the Google self-driving cars and all those things. The goal of this company is to, as they say, is to come up with ideas that are a huge breakthrough. They are not only a 10% improvement, okay? Because the investment is huge to justify 10% improvement. So the first step that they try to do on that company is always trying to kill that idea. If you are a project manager of a given project at this company and you kill your idea, you will receive 1 week of paid vacations, you will have a raise, and everyone will be clapping to you. Isn't that awesome? This is really the culture of failing fast and accepting that you can fail. This is what we should be aiming for. I know that this may be difficult for some people, but there are tools that you can apply to do that. For example, one that I like is the idea of pre-mortem meetings. A pre-mortem meeting is basically someone has an idea, we want to do this thing, and we bring everyone into the room and we say, okay guys, how we are going to kill this thing today, right? And we are developers, we are awesome, killing the work from a different person, right? But the idea is that you create the mindset that even the author starts engaging in that project because you realize that it's really useful to do that. You realize that you will be gaining with that. Yeah. So if you want to do that, it's quite simple. You just bring some people on your team into a meeting and you challenge everyone. Let's forget who's the author. Let's start picturing what could go wrong on this thing. And you may have 2 different outcomes. One of them is we have ideas to improve this thing, right? And a possible bad solution will become a good solution. Or for example, you have you realize that the thing will not work, and you go for another option. Because sometimes you have a lot of ideas how to approach one problem, but you need to pick one. And another useful tool is the Occam's razor. Occam's razor is a principle that tells you that when you are facing two possible options, most likely the best one is the simplest one. And that even in software makes a lot of sense, because imagine you need to implement one thing and you have an easy path and a difficult path. If you go through the easy one, you can reach to a conclusion, if it works, quite faster. Complexity usually hides a lot of things. Usually you need to dig up and you keep going until the moment that you realize that you need to go back. If you go through the simplest one, if you fail really fast, no problem, go to the other one. Okay? And that can be a simple thing to do. But the most powerful tool that I have to you is questioning the value of everything. You have heard about these things, right? Even in this conference, we talk about Yagni and KISS and all those things. All of this is just this question. Do I really need this thing? Is this value or not? Huh? Do I really need to keep this thing? If you start asking that thing a lot of times to your choices and to choices of other people, you will see that you start simplifying a lot of things. And this one, I'm not that good doing it, that is learning to say no. Right? Someone tells you, okay, we want to deliver this in a week. No, it will not be feasible. If I say yes on that case, I'm buying a problem for myself. It will be stress, it will be anxiety, it will be pain. Do you want to come to that party? Sometimes you say yes just because you don't want to be impolite, but in reality, if you go, maybe you will feel pain because you don't want it to be there. You want it to be doing something different. And you can apply this either to your job, but also to the outside world. You don't need to be rude to say no, but it's a useful tool to have on the toolbox. And now I would like to do a small exercise with everyone. Okay? I will ask you to pay close attention to this video.
Is 30. But you see the moon way back.
This is an example of software developers writing code, usually, or looking for a bug. We are so focused on looking for a tree that we ignore the complete forest, right? And this is normal because we have focus. If you close your fist in front of your eyes, it's kind of, if I don't see you, everyone, okay? I'm just in my small world. Everything around is blurred. And when you are looking for one given problem, that happens a lot. What can you do to fight that? It's quite simple. You just go for a walk sometimes, right? There's one really cool thing that you can do. For example, if you are working on a problem with a teammate and you are not finding a solution, yeah, just go for a walk together and talk about it. For example, have you experimented doing one-to-ones walking? Is awesome. It's really cool. Your brain looks like goes to a different place. It's really cool thing to do. Sometimes you may not be doing that because you are working at home, but you have the option to go outside. But let's say that you don't do. You can start talking with a rubber duck if you want that people think that you are crazy. Otherwise, you can talk with anyone. You may talk with a pet. I talk with my dog sometimes. You can talk with someone that lives with you that doesn't get anything of that context that you are talking about. The simple fact that I'm expressing that thing will make me realize a lot of things that I don't notice. Is really a powerful tool. Yeah. But sometimes we have those problems when it requires creativity. What everyone tells you when you need to be creative. Think outside of the box, right? I will tell you the opposite. Think inside of the box. Constraints are powerful, and I will explain you why. Lego, I think that it was somewhere in 2014, 2015, there was a meeting in the marketing department where one person challenged the team to empty their pockets, and they sum up with the amount that they have on top of the table. They have around 100 euros. That for marketing at Lego looks impossible to do anything with it, right? But they came up with an idea that was, they basically Googled online for a strange word that doesn't exist, that is basically cronky-wonky. And they posted online a challenge where they would give a set in that value of the 100 euros to the winning team. And they were basically challenging kids to do this thing. So a parent would build something with their kids, they will post a picture online, and if it's the winner, it gains that set. So really inexpensive. This thing was such a success that even today, there are people posting cronky-wongis online. Because when you say to a toddler, yeah, let's build a cronky-wongi, they will not ask you what is a cronky-wongi. They will come up with one, right? That is creativity. It's creativity when you have no constraints on the side of that toddler, but also when you know that you only have 100 euros and you need to come up with something awesome, right? I think that is really, really cool. Another example that I use to explain this idea of thinking inside of the box is thinking about, for example, someone that writes a novel, right? An author. Do you know the blank page syndrome? Have you heard about it? Right? When an author starts writing a book, but the first page is really hard, usually. What they will recommend you to do if they have faced that thing is one simple thing, is just start writing. When you start writing your first sentence, pause for the, when you start writing, your first sentence will work as a constraint for the rest of the story. Okay? And your brain starts keeping engaging with it. And what happens next? What should I do now? Who are my characters? Right? And that is really powerful. That's why we need to think more with constraints. So when you start a project or a challenge, always ask, how much money do I have to do this? How much time do I have? Right? Do I have anything in place that I need to respect to do this? Right? When someone challenges you to, we need to start thinking outside of the box to come up with a new product. Start asking those questions. You'll see that the constraints are there and you will be even more creative. Another good example that I like of coming up with awesome ideas and simple ideas when everything seems lost is a story by Massimo Bottura. And I really like it, not only because it's food also, but it's really a good story. Massimo Bottura is an Italian chef, one of the best chefs in the world. He has Michelin stars and all those things. And on a given service, by the end of the service, they have to serve 2 lemon tarts, okay? They only have that. They didn't have more for serving. On that kind of restaurant, you don't have a lot of food flying around. They prepare everything according to what is planned, because you need to book that visit long before. So they were about to serve those things, and the sous chef accidentally let one of them fall on the floor. Panic, right? On a Michelin star restaurant, going back to the table saying, we don't have dessert for you? I will not try to do that. But Massimo looked into the floor and he saw beauty on that thing. He liked the patterns, he liked the colors, and he had an idea. Let's recreate that thing that we are seeing on the floor on 2 plates. So they used the good one and they deconstruct that thing in 2 plates. And on that moment, his signature dish, that is this one, has born. And the name is exactly that one. If you go to his restaurant, you will ask for, oops, I dropped a lemon tart. It's the name of the dish. This is really creativity. And the most incredible thing is that this would not be possible if Massimo was panicking, if he was stressed, if he was really anxious. He was calm. You look into things in a simple way when you are calm. And that is really powerful. Or for example, another story that I really like is from 1975. This person is Keith Jarrett. He doesn't play anymore. He is one of the most brilliant jazz musicians that we have seen. And one of his most iconic albums is this one, is the Concert. Even if you don't like jazz, you should listen to it. And this concert has an amazing story. He is really perfectionist. He is the kind of musician that before the show, he will distribute drops for the cough to make sure that no one starts coughing during the show, to see the level that we are talking about. He's really a perfectionist. And he went to this concert, and there was a promoter that only was 17 years old. Was only 17 years old. And the guys from the building where they were doing this thing messed up, and they brought the wrong piano to the place. It was a piano that was broken, couldn't reach high tones. Everything was messed with it. And when he see it, he said, I will not play with that. No, we are canceling this show. But she persisted, and he finally accepted to do it. And at that moment, he basically starts playing in a completely different way that was used to. But he starts to be really creative because he had those constraints. He knew that he couldn't reach some tones. He knew that he needed to play even harder because the piano didn't have all the power for everyone to listen. And he created basically his masterpiece on that moment. It's on those moments when you have all those constraints in place that the true genius starts to appear. And if you think about it, it's magical when you think about those things. Obviously, we are not musicians. Some of you may be. I'm not. We are not Italian chefs, and we build software. And when we build software, we also have to deal with complexity. We know it, right? And one of the things that I try to do every time that I design software is to always start by the part of designing. I know that a lot of sessions have told you that you should start by DDDing everything, right? But one of the first things that you should do is to think on who will be using that thing. Otherwise, you may build one thing that is too complex for someone to use, and at that moment, you will have a problem. You have moved all the complexity from the inside to the outside. So you are damaging the good life of someone, and you don't want that. And you can do that in simple ways. You can do that by just drawing a few boxes. If you are using an API, just start thinking, okay, if I have this endpoint, will be easy to use or not? Those kind of things are useful to do. And always think about abstracting the complexity. We may think that, okay, we solve complex problems, so complexity needs to be there. But anyone that you know can use Google, right? Google is simple. No, it's not. Inside, it should be really complex. I don't work for Google. Maybe that is just querying a MySQL table. I'm not sure. But I believe it's not. It would be funny if I work for Google and I say, yeah, it's just querying a SQL table. Yeah. So we can always do this complexity abstraction. That is our job. That is what we need to do. And you can do that by one simple thing, that is start to thinking really small. When we say this, we are basically talking about decomposition. You know that. You look into a huge problem, you split it in chunks, and you start thinking about small things, right? You see the overall picture, and now you see what's my next small challenge that I can do to achieve my goal. When you start thinking about small things, you can start abstracting that complexity and coming up with simple things. So you can, I'm not saying that you should not aim for huge goals or to dream big. You should, but you can act in a simple way in small steps. That's the idea. Another really important thing to don't come up with complex things is knowing patterns and anti-patterns. Why this is important? Patterns and anti-patterns in the software industry, they are basically history books, right? Or a cookbook, if you like to cook. It's a recipe that someone tested, and it's really good. Right? In Portugal, we have more than 1,000 patterns of cooking cloth. Okay? It's our thing. We are proud of it. Right? And the same applies to software. If you start knowing a lot of those things, when you face a challenge, you will have tools to do with it, to overcome it. The same way as anti-patterns, because anti-patterns are in fact complexity, are things that you may start and you don't notice, but one day they will get back to you, right? They will remember, I'm here, you can't do that thing because I'm here. Yeah, and you want to avoid those things. I didn't talk about code so far, source code, and I will do it in one slide. Write simple code. Okay? Clean code, do this, do whatever. Doesn't matter. Write simple code. Code that is easy to read, code that is easy to maintain, code that is easy to change. And you can do that really simply by starting to name things properly. Yeah, an A is simple than a word. One letter is simple than a word, right? It's less things, but it's not simple to read. Okay? If you think that simplicity is a unity of measure of letters, that is not correct. Don't be afraid of naming things with long names. Your compiler doesn't care. Think about extracting code to methods, name those methods properly, and so on and so forth. When you do simple code, you are basically doing a favor to everyone around you, because your first client is always the person next to you. Okay? It's your first client. And it's the one that one day will be working for another company and will say, that person is good. That person is good. I remember his code, right? Obviously, you can simplify anything without removing stuff. For example, minimalists have that thing of coming up to their home and throwing everything away, right? They start subtracting things. And in software, it's a bit difficult. If you go to your product manager and you say, we are throwing away all the features, he will not let you do that, unfortunately, sometimes. But you can do simple things like consolidating things. You have two features or you are introducing a new one, you can start thinking and inviting them about thinking on redesigning one, on bringing in a feature trying to achieve a different process. You can simplify things that way. A lot of times you have multiple screens to do the same thing. In the 90s and in the beginning of the 2000s, it was really common that softwares that do CRUD operations would have a screen for create, a screen for update, right? And a screen for delete. Nowadays, we have overcome that thing. That thing was complexity that we have to deal. Okay, so we are coming to an end. And what I want to tell you is that I start with my story of dealing with all that. The reality is that I noticed that I was somewhere on the top, and I start to paying attention during my day-to-day. I start to taking meaningful decisions, to be aware of what I am doing, to start questioning the value of a lot of things. And the reality is that after I start doing that, the crises that I used to have that were really frequent start disappearing. Do you remember that the doctor told me that I should go to a swimming pool, right? That was my kind of sport. Since 2015 until the past year, I couldn't run. Now I can run 5K in 30 minutes. Okay? And that is because I start learning to listen to everything that is around me and inside me. I start to notice when I'm going too far. And you can do the same to avoid getting into a bad state. And you can do that really easy. You do like Marie Kondo, right? You start questioning the value. She says, pick something and ask if it sparks joy. Right? It's a catchy phrase to say, is this thing value for me or not? Has this thing value for me or not? Right? And you can do that with a lot of things, even with source code. That is the cool part. And the other thing that I invite you to do is to start thinking like a writer. Okay? You are not a software developer, an engineer, a product manager, whatever. You are creating a brand. You are not thinking only about that line of code. You are thinking about your career. You are thinking about the first book that you have written, but also on the next one. You want to be someone that thinks about the other. You want to be someone that the others remember on the day that you go to a different place, to a different company, right? And that is the kind of mindset that brings a lot of simplicity to your life, because you feel really calm when you feel that you have done your best and you have thought about the others. And when you think about the others, you are basically respecting their time. And time is really a precious thing. 5 minutes in a workday is not the same as 5 minutes while you are with your family. They don't have the same value. Usually companies pay more. I'm kidding. But yeah, once you start valuing these small things, you will start valuing the time that you use. And when you start noticing those things, you will start respecting the time of your users, for example. There are some people that when you remove 5 minutes from a process that they do every single day, they will create an album of pictures of you. They will bring food to you. They will love you because you have saved a lot of pain from them. Be that kind of person that saves time for the others. Basically, you have a choice. You always have a choice, and you can choose the simplest approach. There's a person that says that simplicity is not easy, but is possible and can change your life. Do you know who have written that thing? Thank you.